Welcome to Flow Spa. This quick video is going to give you a run through of your first float experience so that you know what to expect and how everything works when you come in for your first float. First off, when you come in, you'll check in at the front desk and one of our team members will either guide you to your float room or ask you to wait a couple of minutes if we're still getting the room ready. If you've also booked for a massage or a sauna appointment before your float, we'll make sure that there's a bathrobe in the room so that you can easily transition to the float room that you're in after you're done either your massage or sauna. So we will then lead you into whichever float room you are booked into. And these float cabins that we have a ton of space and overhead height. And I'm going to show you just how spacious they are, as well as some of the features that allow you to customize the float experience to exactly what you want. So the float cabins have a ton of space and overhead height. It feels like you're stepping into a big room. Inside, you can see that there are lights that can stay on, including a blue light that's under your control if you don't want to go complete lights out. And we can also play music or not, whatever your preference is. If you want more of that complete sensory deprivation experience, or if you prefer the comfort of having music or lights stay on, we'll make sure that it's totally set up however you prefer when you come in for your float. And there's a shower in each of these float rooms, so you're going to take a quick shower before getting into the float, as well as afterwards you want to shower really well to rinse off because you're covered in salt water. From there, you're able to get started with your float. You'll find on the benches in the float room some hand towels, and I like to dry my face off and then tuck it either on the inside, there's a handle in the cabin, or on the inside of the door if you do want to close the door. And you'll also find that there's a bottle of fresh water hanging up in there. We like to keep that handy because it is super salty in the float tank. So we always like to dry our faces. I like to do that so that I'm not tempted to touch my face at all when I get in for the float. And then, like I said, you can close the door if you're comfortable. If you want to keep it open, that's also totally fine. These rooms are nice and warm so that regardless, the temperature stays perfectly consistent with your body temperature and you get that comfortable, relaxing float experience. Now, a few other things that we have in the float rooms that help to make the experience as comfortable as possible for you is a motion detector for the lights so that these lights go off after about 5 minutes. That helps if you want the complete lights out. If you want these lights to stay on, you can always let us know and we'll turn off that feature so that the lights never shut off in the room. We also have the float halos. These are like head and neck pillows that sit behind your head and kind of help to support your head and neck. Some people find it more comfortable that way. Others find it helpful when they're just getting started with their first float. I like to say it's kind of like the training wheels because it helps to reassure you that your head stays up when you're floating, although it's not necessary, and you'll be amazed at how weightless you are because of the amount of salt in the water. And then on the benches in the float rooms, there's also a basket with a couple of other things that we find helpful. First off, there's earplugs. Some people like to keep the water out of their ears, so we always have the earplugs available. We also have this rinse of vinegar and water. It's simply a 50-50 solution of vinegar and water. I find it really helpful though. I usually don't wear the earplugs, but rinsing my ears out afterwards with the vinegar just helps to dissolve the salt so it's not left behind in the nooks and crannies. And there's a Q-tip that helps with that process too. And then we have packets and cups of petroleum jelly just because sometimes if you've got like a paper cut or a scrape, it can feel irritated by the salt. And the whole point's to relax. And if that defeats the purpose because you've got a paper cut or something that is stinging from the salt, then that's always helpful to create like a nice waterproof barrier for it. Now, people also often wonder about bathing suits. These rooms are completely private. There's a lock on the door, so you can lock the door for yourself. And most people prefer to float nude, but whatever you're comfortable with is totally fine. If you do choose to wear a bathing suit, Make sure that you wear it when you're showering off afterwards, just to get all the salt water out of it. And then the experience is completely under your control, as far as if you want the lights to stay on, if you want the music to play. You can even plug in your own device and we can help you to do that. If you want a specific guided meditation track to play or music of your own choice, but we have a lot of ambient, relaxing sort of spa music that we like to play. Just kind of, most people like it for the first 5 or 10 minutes of their float, and then it'll fade out and come back on as their signal for the end of the session, along with the red light coming back on. But we'll make sure that it's clear on what you want exactly when you come in. And then for after your float is done, we have a little hair drying and prep area for afterwards. If you need to make use of the hair dryers, there's also lotion and hair oil and things that people like to make use of for afterwards. I just want to close out with a few tips and thoughts that will help you to get the most out of your float experience. A lot of people wonder if they're doing it right or if they're just not suited to float. And the truth is, everybody has their own experience in the float tank. There's no right or wrong way to float. But most clients do like to find some form of stillness and getting settled in without moving around a whole lot, once they've kind of played around with position and found what's most comfortable. I find that slowing down your breathing, getting those deep, relaxing belly breaths really helps, as well as trying to reduce the temptation to touch off on the sides too much. If you're pushing off or bouncing off, it can be fun at first, but if you really want that full sensory deprivation experience, you can achieve it. It's just learning not to react to touching the walls so that your body can settle perfectly into the center of the float tank. And then it's also totally natural for thoughts to come up and to not have a totally clear mind, especially when you're new to floating. The thing that really helps is to recognize that this is normal. And then I find that if I try to count to 10 breaths without losing track of thought, that's a really easy way to snap back into a very relaxed and calm state. And because of the lack of inputs when we're in the float tank, there's no extra pings going off from our phone or noises or distractions. It really allows our thoughts to settle down and find a lot more calmness and stillness than we're used to in our everyday life. And that can be really relaxing and an amazing experience for us to have. So then after your float is all done, you can head on into any other appointment if you booked in for something like a massage, contrast therapy, or sauna appointment. Otherwise, you can take that peace and tranquility from your float experience into the rest of your day.